Hello, everyone. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Mindful Constitution podcast. I'm excited today to chat with Madison Rossi of the Lightwork Center. She is a spiritual guide, healer, and teacher. So, we're going to talk a lot about what that means, her path that led her here. She's also a fellow Soba sister, so we're going to talk about that. So, yes, I feel like now is such a beautiful time for us to all be leaning into our spiritual development and growth. So, I'm just excited to talk more about what that means. Hi, Madison.
Hi, Katie. Thank you so much for having me on. And I really appreciate this opportunity. And I also really appreciate the container that you build and have been building for people to explore, sobriety and all the portals and gateways that open up within the self when we allow that space to come in. It's really beautiful. So thank you for the work that you do.
Yes, thank you. I know it is. I love the word portals. That's such a good word for it. The portals that open because has this magical feeling to it. And they really are magical portals that you unlock in sobriety. And that
Yeah.
is such a wonderful way of putting it.
Yeah, yeah. My journey of sobriety has really shown me that, after, and we can get into all of the psychedelic
Yeah.
journeys, hallucinogen and psychedelic journeys that I've been on now, being sober for like 15, almost 15 years, and really realizing that the experience of being alive and the spiritual experience of exploring the self and discovering the self and the universe through the expression of the self is truly the most psychedelic experience one could
Yeah.
ever
It is one
have.
hell of a drug.
Yes,
Life.
yeah, it is.
Life
It is.
sober is a whole different. It is so funny that you say that too. And I probably would have been like, what the frick is this person saying when I drank? Just like, get high on
Yeah.
life. You really understand when you start getting further along in your sobriety and you overcome a lot of sort of the darker parts of early sobriety and a lot of the inner healing that you need to do is just you really start to feel that feeling of what it means to be high on life, joy, connection, passion, creativity, just having vibrant life force and excitement for living is truly what they mean when they say that. And I'm starting to really get there 6 years in.
Yeah, yeah, it's absolutely a process, and it's to anyone who's listening who maybe is in that sober curious place or feeling like they couldn't possibly survive without their nightcap or their, smoke or, whatever it is. I think that anybody who would be here and who is listening has felt, and I think a lot of people feel that little bit of a tug of, I think there's something more
Mm-hmm.
or I want there to be something more. I hope that there's something more. There's that little string that kind of gets tugged in the back of our minds. And I would explore people to really give that a good a good
Yeah.
yank, to really
Yeah.
lean into what could be possible about what we haven't experienced yet, and what's out there. And that bravery that it might take to step through some of those doorways, through some of those uh, questions that those doors open to us and see what's on the other side. Because there really is so much more to life than maybe we were told or sold growing up, and what we have been taught to settle for. There's truly so much more, and we're really in a process of awakening and have been on the planet for a little bit now, and that process has been developing and going through its own maturation. So there's so much out there for people to receive once they start asking those questions, because
Yeah.
really a spiritual journey is really governed by questions, the questions that you're asking yourself and the energies that come. And a lot of the training that I have received has been about learning to ask the right questions, right? That
Mm-hmm.
self-discovery and asking the right questions that are going to open the right doors that will reveal the hidden knowledge and the hidden power that we all have within us.
Yes, it's so, you're speaking my language, first of all. I was just talking to my girlfriend about this last night. We were hanging out, and she's been recently like sober curious, hasn't drank in a while, and we were just talking about that same feeling of when you start accessing that life force within and how it really is just exciting and you want to share with other people just when how you reference, the stories were sold on you want to scream from the rooftops like you can find happiness without any of this shit they're trying to sell us, without any of the lacking worthiness that they're trying to instill in us, like all of these things. And with the raising awareness and awakening on the planet, I really do see that like sort of coalescing with the rise in sober curiosity. It makes so much sense that people are just starting to feel this nudge more heavily, and I think that has a lot to do with just the rising frequency of the planet and people becoming a little more conscious and curious about what they may have access to when they start removing some of the things that are dimming them down. So,
Yeah, yeah. And it's all happening, it's sort of like a chicken and the egg situation, right? Where we have all of these old paradigm structures that are like self-imploding pretty much, they're
mm,
self-destructing. And at the same time, we have all these people waking up who are realizing that these structures that we have built, although they have brought us wonderful gifts and wonderful advancements in the world of medicine and science and technology, we have all of these incredible advancements, but at the same time, we feel more disconnected from ourselves and from each other than we ever have, or maybe we're just more aware of that. So it's kind of like all this is happening and we're all waking up. And to me, that is because the people who are, well, the new paradigm that we have to build has to have energy woven into the fabric of its reality. It has to be in its foundation, whether you want to call that energy or spirit or God or whatever it is, that has to be reinfused into the way that we live our lives. So the new paradigm, right? Because birth is always followed, destruction is always followed by birth. So as we have one old paradigm that is ending, we have a new one that is beginning. And I find it to be a much better use of my time and my energy and my attention and intention and focus to be on what is the new thing that we are building.
right.
And that new paradigm is going to be built by the people who have an innate, or not innate because it can be learned, but an established relationship with energy and the way that energy flows and the way that energy works primarily within themselves first. We learn it within ourselves and then we learn it out in the universe. And those people who have that knowledge and have that base of understanding and energy and spirit will be the ones who will build the new paradigm that has that interwoven in it so that truly all dimensions of our spirit existence here in the human realm will be addressed in this new paradigm that we are building. So those who are feeling that call, who are waking up, really need training, healing and training. I lean more towards training because I think that that includes the healing as well.
Mhm.
Training in energy, training in spirit, in order to be able to wield those powers within themselves and out in the world to create the new paradigm that we are moving into.
100%. And, I focus a lot with sensitive women, and I feel a lot of sensitive women are feeling this sober curious calling more than ever because the sensitive ones amongst us are the ones that are kind of feeling this pull towards the unseen, towards reintegrating the energetics of spirit, our connection to God, our connection to nature. A lot of the sensitive women among us are just subconsciously being called towards helping to recreate that new earth and the new paradigm that you're talking about. That really does kind of weave back in our connection to creator, God, universe, source, whatever you want to call it, even like our intuition, our highest self, all of that, the power of being connected to that. And I find that pull towards sober curiosity is kind of part of it for those women who are learning to lean into that magic so that they can help to guide others back to that and kind of be on the forefront of that shifting, which is just so cool. So, yeah, I'm totally on the same page. I really love the way that you articulated it so well, too. And so I really love asking, you were sharing a little bit when we hopped on about your sort of educational credentialing and the spiritual development department. So I want to hear more about that and just more broadly what sort of guided you here and how you landed in this line of work, line of training.
It was not expected. I'll tell you that. I'll tell you right now. I don't like I know how I ended up here, but I don't know how I ended up here.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I am an initiated guide, healer, and teacher with the Modern Mystery School in the lineage of King Solomon. So the lineage of King Solomon goes back several thousands of years, over 3,000 years. It's an alchemical hermetic lineage, meaning when we're working with alchemy, we're working with true magic. We're working with transmuting something into something else or nothing into something, right? So primarily we're working with, you could call it like the alchemy of the soul. So taking our lead, heaviness, our negative ego, our negative emotions, our limiting beliefs, right? All the social programming that we have and transforming it into the gold of our higher selves or our higher soul. And it is hermetic, meaning that we're working with the mind of God. So, with the idea that everything was created by a one God, and that all is the first hermetic principle is that the all is mind. Everything is mental, meaning that everything that is created comes from the mind and not the monkey mind. We want to be aligned with the mind of God, that divine intelligence from which all creation springs. And the idea that there is a system, there is a formula, are certain principles and laws within Hermetics. So we study those laws in application to ourselves in an application to our world in order to become master manifestors, in order to bring order to chaos, in order to bring harmony and beauty to disharmony, and raise everything to their highest frequencies. So that is the lineage of King Solomon. And I can get more into, there's a series of activations and initiations that are provided within that lineage to provide that self-mastery. And then the Modern Mystery School is sort of the like the organizing body that contains the purity of the lineage. I like to tell people that lineage is kind of like a cookbook or a recipe book. Like if you have like your great 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 grandmother's recipe book for the way that magic has been done through time and tried and tested. We do everything within the lineage according to that recipe book because we know for 3,000 years plus that this works. And long story short, the entire purpose or reason for this lineage existing and for us doing and providing this work is in order to achieve world peace. And the idea that world peace means that, in my opinion, my interpretation is that world peace will be achieved when every single person has the freedom to express their true individuality of their higher selves. So when we have more and more people who are in that freedom, in that empowerment, in that creative state, and able to live in the embodiment of their higher selves and all of the joy and beauty and goodness that comes from that, that's when we will achieve higher world peace. So, by providing a path of activations and initiations to provide the healing and the training that is needed to embody your higher self, is how we can effectively create world peace in this world. So, I never imagined myself doing this work ever, 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 ever. If you want to go way back, I would say that, my journey started in childhood, being a sensitive kid, being a kid who probably like at least once a week would ask to go home because I had a stomach ache, that typical like anxiety, stomach ache as a kid. And then that evolving into as I was growing up, I think it started with the realizing that adults were lying to themselves and to each other and to me all the time. Even down to the minuscule like, "Oh, how are you doing?" "Oh, I'm fine." you know, and being a kid and being very sensitive and being very, very open to energy, you see that and you're like, that's a lie. You're lying. Why are we lying? You know?
Why are we all
Why,
lying?
why is everyone lying to themselves and to each other? Who's in charge here? Why are the people that are in charge lying, you know? And then getting up into middle school and high school, and then that turned into a lot of anger. And I was going to protests and I was, had a lot of disciplinary issues as a teenager. And I think because I was like riling against this system that I was on this like conveyor belt, just moving towards, and this total distrust and lack of safety in this world that felt very illusionary,
Mhm.
very disintegrous, and very just not serving for the people who are in it. And at the same time, feeling very hopeless. And that's also when my substance abuse started, in high school with smoking cigarettes and drinking and partying and like going out to all this stuff because just had a lot of emotions that I couldn't manage and I didn't know what to do with. And nobody else seemed to care or have them. I really felt singled out in my experience. Like everyone else was fine with what was going on, and I was not. And I didn't know what to do with that.
I still feel like that. I'm like, hello, what's happening around here? Does anyone see this
Yeah.
shit?
Yeah.
I'm like, are we just all watching the Super Bowl and pretending like nothing's
Who
happening?
cares? Sort of. Like, I'll just stay still. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And then
Yeah.
ended up, I went to Catholic school and I joke around and say that Catholic school made me an atheist, because I was like,
Yeah.
what I learned in Catholic school is like, whatever God this is, I want nothing
Yeah.
to do with that,
Right.
and, was like, oh, I want to help the world. I guess I'll go to, I wanted to be a doctor, but my grades weren't good enough. So they were like, go to nursing school. And I was like, all right, fine, whatever. And then, and then in nursing school, again, it just the problem just kept expounding. Now I'm in hospitals and I'm feeling people's energy and I'm seeing people get admitted to the hospital. And the first thing they do is strip you of your integrity, and you can like lose all human rights and all human dignity in the hospital. And really having a hard time with that, which then again just expounded more drug use, because it was like everything was going wrong. So it was like I had to do more drugs to cover up, to try
Yeah.
to numb out how awful I felt.
Well,
And
and the medical system is so broken itself. And if you are already picking up on the brokenness in society, the illusion of it all, and then going into the medical field, like, what the
yeah,
heck is going on
yeah. And
here?
then combined with the whole thing being like, well, it must be me. Something must be
Yeah.
wrong with me. This is a me problem, clearly, because everyone else seems fine. And then graduating nursing school, getting out into the field and working as a nurse and just, basically doing, a lot of drugs and seeing nurses burnt out, smoking cigarettes on their break and complaining about their husband and being like, I don't want this. I don't
Yeah.
want this. Like, what am I going to do? So it really got to the point for me, I was really brought to a breaking point where my physical health was really failing me. I had developed an eating disorder. I was doing drugs every day, drinking beer every day, and just really like my physical health came to a screeching halt, to a point where I think I prayed for the second time in my life, the first time being in second grade when I couldn't find my math homework or something, and was brought to my knees and was just like, if there's a God, if you're there, and if you're listening, if you take this pain away, if you make me healthy again, I will be better. I'll be a better person. Like I'll try harder. I'll put in some effort. And my physical health did restore, and got back out, and started, went back to work. But I knew that something was very, very broken inside me at that point. I could not return to my life as it was. I could not ignore the fact that my life choices had brought me to this place of, not that I was like close to death, but the pain was excruciating, the amount of pain
Yeah.
I was in. So, I knew that, and I had been, being a disgruntled teen, I had been in and out of therapy for a good portion of my life. And I knew that that was not going to help me at all because that was just more the same horse crap, um, from the rest of the world. And I think at that point was when I was like, all right, just out of pure desperation, I will look at spirituality because it's the only stone I haven't unturned. I had done hallucinogen, I had peered through the holes of existence and seen God, you know what I mean? But then
Yeah.
back on the other side was like, well, what do I do with this now? Like I
Yeah.
don't like what the heck? So I ended up uh in the office of a modern mystery school guide with very much my science atheist skeptical brain running rampant on one side and this other side of my head being like just being at that point like if there has to be something else because otherwise like I'm good, like I'm all set on this planet, like we can be done now. So these two kind of extremes that were battling inside me and offered me a life activation session. Actually offered what really, sold me, if I could say sold, was, because I said to him, if there's a redo button on life, I want to press it. I would like to press the redo button. Um, Everything about the way that my life was at that point was not what 5-year-old Madison had envisioned. I didn't want to be a pack-a-day smoker. I didn't want to be addicted to weed. I didn't want to be doing all of these things that I was doing. And he offered me to do the Universal Kabbalah Ascension program. And I was, one half of my brain was like, that's exactly what I have to do. And the other half of my brain was like, this man is talking about listening to spirit guides and like, like getting messages from spirit. Like, this is crazy. Like, this makes absolutely no sense. Like, you need to go. But luckily, I listened. I listened to the other, the angel on the right shoulder, if you will. And, um, and I received life activation and I started receiving sessions and I started the Kabbalah, received Empower Thyself initiation and I started the Kabbalah Ascension program, which were all the preliminary steps on the path, on the initiatory path. And I really fought it for a long time. Like I really wanted to pull the curtain back and find a reason for it not to work. I really wanted to disprove it with my mind because I didn't want this to make sense because it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense that I can hold a crystal wand, to the back of your neck and activate your spiritual codons and all of a sudden your spiritual blueprint is activated and you have contact with your higher self. Like I fought it really hard. But it just kept delivering results. My life just kept improving at such an accelerated path without me doing anything else. My understanding of myself and my ability to connect the dots on what had happened in my life and why I was reacting in the way that I was reacting to my current life and where the wounding was coming from and what that was actually going on and the ability to forgive myself and the ability to forgive my abusers. All of that was just all happening at a rapid pace. And my life was drastically changing. Um, the the addictions just melted away like within a year, and the
Wow.
abusive relationships stopped. And, I had a really hard time holding down a job because I would just get so bored and like fed up with the matrix system. But the fact that I now had a way out, it made the day-to-day manageable. I was no longer on the conveyor belt just leading me to my doom, you know.
Yeah. You're like,
I
there's
was
hope.
yeah,
Yeah.
I was truly the master of my life and had the spiritual and emotional maturity to say, no, I need this job because this is leading me towards a better life. I'm not just on this job to work and die, to work to eventually die and pay taxes along the way. I
The
saw,
pedophiles.
yeah,
Yeah.
I saw a future. I saw a future for my life. I saw meaning for my life. I saw a purpose for my life. I saw value in my life, inherent value and power within myself and within my life, to where waking up every day didn't feel like, oh my God, I have to do this again. It didn't immediately become, oh, I get to do this, but
Mm.
it became more of I deserve goodness because I
Yeah.
am goodness. And starting with those bricks of very simple, gentle, healing truths, I started to build a new life.
Yeah.
I couldn't ignore how effective it was. I couldn't ignore how positive, how much I was changing for the better.
Right.
Um,
Yeah, I think it's so interesting. It resonates with me a lot because I felt very similarly when I first got sober. Like nothing was instantaneously changing, and you're kind of in the depths of a lot of hard work, but there's just something within you that convinces you this is only going to get better, honey. Like you keep it up, this is the worst part. And you can feel the momentum you're building towards something greater. I don't know if you felt that too, but just this like sort of faith once you finally make that decision to be like, no, I'm going to live the life I came here to live. And that voice inside isn't just some delusion. Like, this is a real thing I need to be listening to, and it's taking me somewhere, and I'm going to trust that. It's so empowering that it really kind of allows you to forge ahead through the muck of the arduous, muddy waters of like the initial bits of change where you're kind of like a lot of people turn back there because it's like, well, this is really hard. And if I have no guarantees that my life is going to be exponentially better, like, why would I do that? But that's not how the universe works, right? You have to step out in faith. And I think we, like, deep down knew that's what we were doing and that it was going to meet us. I feel like I had that wisdom from somewhere within myself or my past that was just like, no, girl, you know, like you got to keep going. Like this
yeah.
shit's about to get real good. And I could feel it on like a cellular level when I stopped drinking. And the other thing you said that really stood out to me was just your physical health deteriorating. And I feel so many people, and especially in our culture where it's like, oh, physical problem, like slap this band-aid on it. And working in the medical system, that so many people just don't honor the fact that physical symptoms are trying to expose where your life is sick. And we just keep forging ahead. And so being like, well, what is the root cause here? And that was a lot of my training too, the root cause of what's going on, not just, okay, let's find some solution to this, but why is this happening in the first place? And how can I restructure these areas of my life? And there's a lot that our mind, body, and spirit is trying to communicate through physical discomfort, emotional discomfort, mental health issues. All of that is God's way of working through our divine design to be like, hey, something ain't right. You might want to fix it.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. It's always there's always so much for us to learn in many, many different dimensions. And I think that that's where so the life activation session that I offer is the generally the first session that I offer clients to activate the spiritual DNA. And I find it to be so, so helpful both for, whether it's spiritual healing or physical healing or emotional healing, nervous system regulation, letting go of, addictions. It's so helpful because that leap of faith that we're talking about when we're wanting to get better or wanting to change something with the hope, right, that it'll be better on the other side. What I find is I work with a lot of people who have been in therapy for a long time, for example, and we're working with a talk therapy based type of healing where they're identifying different belief patterns, different and then coming up with different coping mechanisms, right? And it comes down to when we have a negative pattern that's in place, right? It's there for a reason. We took it on for a reason, whether it be a physical pattern or a mental pattern or an emotional pattern, right? And a certain pattern became ingrained into us, usually from childhood out of survival. We
Mm-hmm.
developed this coping mechanism, this survival mechanism in order to survive. And it can even be a survival mechanism as simple as um, being deserving or having a sense of belonging or to numb ourselves from a pain that we don't know how to process, right?
Sensitivity. Just being
Sensitivity.
a sensitive
Exactly.
soul and not realizing that you're not the dysfunctional one. The world is really effed up, and you're trying to
Exactly.
conform
Exactly.
to it.
Yeah. So we take on this pattern, this belief, this behavior in order to cope, in order to convince ourselves or try to survive through this
Hmm.
thing. So to try to remove that belief system or that pattern feels like a life or death situation because you put it on there as a pattern, as a band-aid for survival.
Hmm.
And then to remove that makes you vulnerable to maybe not survive, right?
Right.
So when we're pulling that, we're trying to pull that band-aid off or that pattern off. It's really helpful if we can have another identity that is not that thing that we can lean into and say, okay, well, I'm not this. What am I? Oh, maybe I'm this. And that's something that the life activation provides by activating the spiritual DNA. It provides another framework that you can lean into of like, okay, maybe I'm not, a victim or worthless or undeserving or different or weird or wrong or whatever it is, this whole litany of things that we pick up along the way from different traumatic experiences in our lives. Maybe I'm not those things. Maybe I am good. Maybe I am light. Maybe I am beauty. Maybe I am order. Maybe I am harmony. Maybe I am powerful, right? Maybe I am all these other things. And that, talking about portals when we first came on, when we were chatting before, is opening that portal of all of those truths, divine truths that you actually are, that can be really hard to embody when you've patched up so many of your holes with these band-aids of coping mechanisms that you start to be unrecognizable even to yourself. And
Hmm.
to remove these band-aids would be life threatening, would be completely threatening to your sustainability, your ability to survive, your ability to be safe in yourself. But when we provide that new structure of light within you and activate that light of your spiritual DNA, the true essence of who you are on a spiritual level, on a higher realm, letting go of all those things, after I received those first couple activations and initiations, all of this stuff just fell away. It's like I was trying, but I kind of wasn't. You know what I mean? I was reaching out for something, but a lot of it's not a magic pill. I won't say that anything is going to take away all your problems immediately, but I will say that when you can establish a foundation of light and truth within yourself, removing that which isn't becomes a lot easier. A
Yeah.
lot of that struggle is removed because you have this basis within
Yeah.
yourself.
It's so interesting talking about this too because I just started doing a addiction intensive, and they talk a lot about how we much of our coping, much of our lens on the world is based on our attachment style, which I'm sure you know about that, and how we grew to see the world as from a fear-based lens or a um, joy filled lens, and that two of the determining factors of secure attachment is our experience of joy with our caregiver and our experience of quiet and our ability to like be in quiet presence with others, and it's this sense of connection to others but also our experience of God, and like that's part of the development of our higher brain, and that's why a higher power is woven in so much. It's like we can't experience that essence of God woven throughout our lives and ourselves when we're in these like lower brains that are never fully developed, when we don't have secure attachments. And I feel like people think of spirituality and like what we're talking about as really like, oh, woo woo, and it's some not kind of negotiable, like fringy, nice, fluffy part of health and wellness. But it was so cool for me to literally see the neuroscience behind relational health, and that includes like relation to your life and God and the presence of God throughout your life, or if God is a weird word for you to say, it's just that like more elevated, um, literally in your brain, more elevated levels of your brain
Higher
accessing that
intelligence, yeah.
experience of God and higher consciousness and being able to have access to that. And when we don't, the world feels lonely, and it does feel kind of like, what's the point? And you could totally see how addictive patterns and behaviors, not just with alcohol or substances, but with identities, being a control freak, with behaviors, with experiences, and the ways in which we move through our life are all through this like kind of more dopamine sort of cycles, as opposed to that greater joy and fulfillment of truly identifying with something greater, our role in it, our connection to each other. And so what you're talking about to me, kind of re-identifying with our the wholeness of ourselves as spiritual beings, is so important in being able to like move past some of the wounding and just really gain access to real healing without those roadblocks in the way of things that we've accepted as coping mechanisms or identities for ourselves. And it is, you know, one thing I try to talk about a lot with people is like really making spiritual health, because we talk a lot about like spirituality versus religion and this and that, and like it's kind of something people think, oh, like, do I believe in this or do I not? But I try to really explain spiritual health as something we all are. Like spiritual health is just as important as mental health, emotional health, physical health. And can you speak to how you would define, you know, access to our spiritual health as like an integral part of our well-being and being human and fully experiencing life?
Yeah, yeah. We are energetic beings, and everything in the universe at its base is energy. And along with everything else that's happening in our world right now, quantum physics and quantum mechanics is really starting to prove what ancient mystics have been saying since the beginning of time. You know, Nikola Tesla said, if you want to understand the world, think of terms of frequency and vibration. You know, as a nurse, you know, for example, when I take your blood pressure, I'm measuring the frequency and vibration of, you know, the pressure of the blood against the inside of your vessels, and whether that pressure is too much and disharmonious or too little and disharmonious, right? So we're always looking for harmonious frequency and vibration, right? Harmonious frequency and vibration creates health, it creates order, it creates peace, right? And you can look at that all the way down at the atomic level, right? You have a atomically volatile molecule or atom, right? And that's going to cause destruction. You have a harmonious molecule, and that's going to create stabilization or peace, right? So everything in the entire universe is made up of energy, right? And has a divine intelligence to it. There is of all of the outer space exploration we have done, we have yet to find an organism or anything that is as complex as the human brain. So the human brain is the most powerful thing in the universe, point blank. It is the most powerful, complex thing in the entire universe, and we don't understand how it works. You know, the human genome, you know, they say 98% of it is junk, you know, and I'm
Yeah,
sorry, but
junk DNA. You're like, ah,
any
I don't think
decade of
God
science,
needs that.
I'm
Yeah.
sorry. We did not have all these thousands of years of evolution to get junk. Okay.
Yeah,
So,
they're like, that's what they want
um,
you to think because they don't want it activated.
yeah, yeah, which I'll do. You just call me. We'll escalate. Um, so, so everything is energy, right? And everything comes from one intelligence, right? And well, what you can believe that or not believe that, but we'll string it along anyway from the science perspective. Um, so we come into this uh, we come into this world, we're born, right, as energetic beings, right? And we come into this world as energetic beings, and we feel energy. We feel frequencies within people. And frequencies are not only, ones that we can measure, you know, with our eyes or with our physical senses, but we also have frequencies of emotions and frequencies of thoughts and frequencies of color, right? The spectrum is very, very, very large. So we come into this world as energetic beings with our full energetic sensory perception activated. And slowly over time, we are taught that energy is not real and that energy doesn't matter. What matters is
The
that you
lies. that you
Yeah.
experienced.
Yes. What matters is that you pay attention in school, that you get an A on your test, that you graduate, that you get a job that you show up to because that will pay your bills and that will attract a partner, which will allow you to establish a livelihood on your own, which will allow you to procreate and live a, good consumer pat on the head life. Um,
Hmm.
and that will be your life and you will be fulfilled, right? Which is a very materialistic experience, right? Very much based in physical materia, physical density. But we're not just physically dense beings. We're not plants, we're not rocks,
Hmm.
we're not minerals, right? We are much, much, much more complex beings in that. We have much more complex thought processes, we have much more complex emotions, we have a much more complex, we look at everything we made. We made all of this. We made AI, we made another intelligence. We're so intelligent that we made another intelligence. Um, so we're much more than just, chemical neurons firing. And even chemical neurons firing is just energy and frequency.
Hmm.
So that I would say, because I have some people come to me and they don't understand, like you said, why they would need spiritual healing because they had a good life, they don't have trauma, they didn't, nothing really bad, crazy happened to them. The way that I define trauma is any experience that allows you to believe that you don't matter, that you're
Hmm.
not important. And when you come into a world as an energy being, and you are right off the bat taught and told that energy is not real and does not matter, what you are told is that you are not real and you don't matter. Your energy doesn't matter. What matters is that you learn this certain way of being so that you can be accepted, aka survive, right? As human beings, we have to be loved. We have to receive love and acceptance and belonging in order to survive. If we are not accepted by the tribe, we cannot survive on our own.
Hmm.
So we start to develop a personality and take on these personality masks in order to fit in order to belong, in order to be accepted by the tribe, in order to learn whatever it is that you have to learn to take up your role in society, which basically says everything that you're feeling deeply and thinking deeply doesn't matter. What matters is that you fill out this questionnaire and this checklist and that you show up to work on time. And that is a hugely traumatic experience.
Hmm.
And are there some people in the world that that can work for? Absolutely. Absolutely. And they can find joy in that existence. And there is absolutely nothing wrong with that. And there's some people that can't find joy in that. And there's some people who need the full expression of their energetic selves and to be able to, what I would call live life alive. His meaning in being full vibration, full frequency, full expression, and fully giving and receiving of oneself with the universe, which is also the self, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
Um, so in order to have that existence, I think there's two things that have to happen at the same time. One is that you have to know yourself. You have to know who you are as an energy spiritual being. You have to awaken and come into contact and embodiment with that higher aspect of who you are. And what will happen at the same time is that you will start to deprogram and unlearn all the stuff that you were taught along the way about not being worthy, about not, XYZ, XYZ, XYZ. And those things happen kind of left foot, right foot, left foot, right foot. And that's a process, and that's a process that can take a long time, that there's many different ways that you can do that process. The path of activation initiation that I provide accelerates that process. It awakens the ability to know thyself, and it accelerates and I also find eases, right? Because when you're trying to shed, you have to become something else. There has to be something you're moving towards, right? We talked about earlier about having that faith of having something that you're moving towards. And I think some people might have that more strongly than others. I would say in the beginning of my spiritual path, I had very little faith all I had, I was mostly moving out of desperation. I was
Yeah.
desperate for something to be different because I knew essentially that with if my life remained as it was, it would end, and
Yeah.
that would be that. And I just desperately didn't want it, didn't want it to end, and I was able enough to swallow my ego enough to accept that something that I don't understand might be the answer.
Yes, that is the key, I think, is when we're willing to let go of our long held beliefs and identities that aren't fact. It's just rooted in our limited experience. And when we're willing to step out in faith and try something new, I'm always talking to clients about beginner's mind and staying curious, because so we have unlock access to so many new realities and potential ways of life that are going to be even more magnificent when we just continue to have an open mind. We can have a great life and it can still get more great because we are open to the possibility of receiving, co creating with God and the universe, but also not thinking that we have it all figured out. I think is the biggest enemy of change is our stubborn nature of thinking that what we know is all there is. And that's the beauty of rock bottoms, is they force you to be open to new possibilities and things you've never tried because you're in a hopeless state of desperation. And it's why ultimately I am grateful that, I kind of had an issue with alcohol, because even with an issue, I was still talking myself into like alcohol and drinking and maintaining room for it in my life, when in reality, like, because I struggled with it maybe a little more than the average person and it was creating more problems in my life, it forced me to explore new ways of living that I wouldn't have explored otherwise, and it allowed me to completely shift and do 180s on my thinking. I had all those limiting beliefs around sobriety, that it would be boring, that I would lose friends, that like blah 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 blah, which some of those things did happen, but ultimately, like, what I thought sobriety was going to be like from the mind of a drinker was 100% different. And it's 100% better than I ever anticipated. And it's unlocked whole different worlds and ways of thinking for me. But one of the greatest things it's done is reminded me to have that mindset towards everything and be open to trying new things all the time. Like, never limit yourself by what you think you already know. And yeah, that was so really like profound for me. And I think, you've probably seen too a lot of people who, I think a lot of you mentioned a lot of people who want that full access to that relationship with life that allows their vibrancy of their spirit to show through. And some people are satisfied. And I don't say like the mainstream conveyor belt, it's just like the mainstream of like what we are funneled towards. You can tell some people are genuinely like seemingly satisfied, but for the people that aren't, I do notice there is like this higher rate of substance use and addictive tendencies, because you're kind of like, get me out of here, And
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
and I
Yeah,
think, oh, yeah, go ahead.
yeah, sorry, do you want to finish?
No, I'm good.
Okay.
I finished. That was
Um,
pretty much it.
yeah, I mean, it's so hard to be in a world that seems to be speaking a foreign language, you know?
Yes. Yeah.
And again, it just keeps on reinforcing that I have to shut down who I truly am
Yeah.
in order to fit in.
Yep.
Have to do this thing or act this certain way or be this certain way in order to be accepted, in order to be okay, right? In order
Hmm.
to exist, you know?
Yeah.
And the thing that I would say to people who are coming up that place of maybe thinking about making that jump into sobriety is that your true self is waiting.
Hmm.
Your true self is waiting to be experienced, to be expressed, to be seen. I think everything that we could experience in our lives that is good, meaning a fulfill, being able to achieve and fulfill your purpose, being able to have really meaningful relationships, being able to really love yourself, right? And that love being alive, all of that is really going to hinge on how well you know yourself. And when whether it drink or smoke, when you use these substances, you're covering up your true self.
Yeah.
You're numbing your true self. You're placing a mask over your true self. And not only are you denying your essence, the joy of being alive and experiencing life, you're denying everyone around you yourself. They're
Mm-hmm.
not getting you. They're
Yeah.
getting you on the thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they're really just getting whatever the substance is.
Yeah.
And I would say to those people that you have one life. You have one life here. I believe that we have one life here.
Mm-hmm.
One time that our soul comes down and experiences this existence before it continues on into its journey into millennia to be do God, who knows what, where.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that you deserve it.
Yeah.
You deserve to live. You deserve to live a life. And I completely, when I was, doing drugs and drinking and everything, I completely had a nihilistic outlook where I was like, well, if I'm only alive one time, I'm going to experience everything, right? I'm
Yeah.
going to experience all the stuff. But in hindsight, that wasn't me experiencing life.
Yeah.
That was me giving like a personification of whatever the entity or energy was that was of that um,
Mm-hmm.
substance, you
Yeah.
know? Um,
Yeah, I agree. Like, I think I even notice it now when people talk about, the state of the world, and they're like, well, like, I'm over sobriety, like, might as well get drunk because everything's going to shit, like that sort of mentality. And I'm like, well, I actually kind of think the opposite. Like, if we are going to, if the world is in a bad place, doesn't it need more of us, like, in our true power than ever before? Like, I'm not ready to give up yet.
no, and the
And
world is not going to shit either.
yeah, I feel like it's the tower card moment,
But
new or
doesn't
yeah, it's like the turmoil needs to happen. So we all take issue with the way the world is structured right now. And so it kind of needs to fall apart for new to be born. And it's going to be a painful process. It's so funny. I saw somebody posted like all the spiritual people just knowing that the earth is going through the dark night of the soul. And it's true. It's like, I think anyone who's kind of gone through their own sort of healing evolution and experienced that like death of your old self and multiple times, right? Like we can have these experiences more than once where we sort of have the darkness that goes alongside having new evolutions of ourself. And for me now, when I have those moments, it actually kind of excites me because I know new layers of myself are about to like be coming to life with the death of kind of that heavy feeling of the dark night of the soul. But I have a question because you said one thing about like you believe we have one life. And I think do you have a cross on right now?
I
Gee.
do.
Yes.
I usually have a cross and a pentagram on,
I
but
love that. So I
yeah.
wanted to talk about that a little because I think this is really fascinating. I know we don't have tons of time left, and you can tell me if you have like a hard stop time because I have two more questions. One, I really am loving like the resurgence of, Christ consciousness, and I'd love for you to talk a little bit about like what is your approach to like the integration of Jesus into your spiritual beliefs. I feel people get very hung up on like religion versus spirituality, and there is this definitive line separating the two when in reality that is not the case at all. There's a lot of like very spiritual people who have a relationship with Jesus who maybe aren't like in dogma in sort of like structured religion, but still, have a relationship with the Bible or what have you. So I would love for you to share what your sort of own individual relationship is with that, and your like thoughts on the afterlife. It sounds like you kind of align with the Christian ideology of like one life, everlasting life. And so tell me more. I'm curious.
Yeah, yeah. I just want to also say one thing about the last thing that we were talking about
Yeah,
like
yeah.
everything that's being revealed. Everything that's being revealed right now isn't new.
Right.
It's always existed. So
Mm.
what's actually happening is it's not that there's more darkness in the world. It's actually that there's more light
Shining on it.
shining on it, which then allows us to do something about it. This is
Love
I
it.
would say that this is quintessentially what light work or healing is, right?
Mm.
It's shining light on the things that are blocking you that maybe you didn't know was blocking you, right?
Yeah.
People come to get healing because they're like, "Man, I'm just hitting my head against this wall over and over and over again. I don't know what it is." And in the process of healing, you're able to be like, "Oh,"
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
then you can move it out of the way,
Yeah, it's like
right?
what your subconscious programs you don't realize are
Exactly.
dictating your reality. Like you have, wounding that made you feel like you weren't good enough, or perfectionism, or underlying resentments, or just the subconscious operating in the shadows, and it can really hold us back. And so I love that
Yeah, so
parallel.
we have
Is
to make yeah, so we have to make the subconscious conscious. And also the collective consciousness has a subconscious.
Yep.
So we have to make that subconscious conscious,
We're
right?
exposing that underbelly right now,
We're
guys.
just exposing that element. And so it's okay. And that's why I'm like, no, the world is not ending. We're just coming to terms with what hasn't been working. And
Right.
we have to, if we have to, even from a very physical sense, if I brought my car to the mechanic and was like, yeah, it makes a weird sound over here, what's the first thing they're gonna do? They're gonna take it apart and
Mm-hmm.
they're gonna look at what's going on, right? So that's what we're in right now. We're being like, ew, that doesn't look right. What do we have to do? We have to take it apart. We have to dissect it. We have to look at the ugly parts, right? These are the stages of alchemy. You break it down into its most basic parts. You look at what's working, what's not working. You get rid of the stuff that's not working. You purify it down what is working, and then you break it apart again to
Mm.
purify it even deeper, to figure out what's not working, where is it, and then you let it
Yeah.
rot, and then you let it, and then you move it out of the way, right? So the fact that we are, and this is the same, with the healing, getting sober. They're like, oh my God, there's all these thoughts that I've been numbing for my entire life. Now I have to be with them. And it's like, yep. And you know what happens when you be with them? You master them.
Mm-hmm.
And then they don't control you anymore. And
Yeah.
then you come into more self-mastery. So just to get rid of all the doomsday
Yes,
thing.
and that's good because that was actually my other question. Well, I guess before we go, we can end on the Christ, Jesus, my boy. We'll end on him.
BTJ!
Yeah, but before that, I guess to kind of wrap up the doomsday talk, how do you feel people like that's such a good perspective to take, but can you think of if that were to, the perspective is one thing, but how do we navigate it tangibly in our day to day? Like, what would you say to people who are like, oh, it's a lot, digesting the collective right now? What's your best advice to people kind of like, oh my God, getting really overwhelmed? Because for some people, I think there's a lot of us who sort of were aware this was going on and maybe were like more conspiracy theorists to like the average person, and even for me, like I wasn't unaware that this was going on, but it has felt quite heavy seeing it come to the surface collectively and just really be like, okay, because even at times I'm like, maybe I am a conspiracy theorist, maybe this isn't really going on, and now it's like, oh, okay, well, yep, nope, that's happening. And so what's your best advice for how to digest, how to navigate?
Focus on where you have power.
Mm-hmm.
There are things in your life that you have power and control over, and there are things in your life that you don't have power and control over. We don't have power and control over what these people are doing.
Yeah.
And conversely, they don't have power and control over what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
Those people aren't in your living room doing whatever they're doing, wagging your finger. Nope, you're not allowed to do this. You're not allowed. No, you and every single person is a sovereign being with freedom
Right.
to wake up every single morning and decide the way that you want to live your life. Do you want to bring goodness and beauty and order into your life? Yes. Okay. There's very simple things that you can do to do that, to keep an orderly life, to keep a beautiful life, to be a good person to other people, to be full of integrity, to be full of honor, to be kind to yourself, to be kind to one another, to have, a moral code. To have discipline, I'm thinking conversely directly into, a lot of what we're looking at, to have self accountability, to have self responsibility, to
Right.
be honest, right? I tell people, it's like we know what it means to be a good person,
Mm-hmm.
right? We know what that means. It's the application where we get tripped up. And the application is purely willpower. It's purely willpower. Where your attention goes, or intention goes, attention flows, or whatever that saying is.
Yeah.
And if you focus all of your attention on things that you don't have power over, that you don't have control over,
Siphoning your energy.
how
Yeah.
are you going to feel? You're going to feel powerless, and
It's
you're going to
the
feel
the last episode I did. Her name's Dr. Cassie Withridge. She's so awesome, but she said, she's like, if you know, she kept saying, like, it's a match. When you know it's a match, you'll know it's a match. And she's like, give yourself permission to be a CIA level investigative conspiracy theorist for a day. Investigate all that shit all day long, 24 hours, and then go out and do the opposite. Focus on your own life. See which one feels better. Where do you want to, and it's so true. It's like,
guaranteed the former.
right, you're gonna feel a
Guaranteed.
lot better when you're like giving yourself permission to focus on what you can control, and I love that too. And that's always been my sort of approach is healing starts with within, and it's still a conversation I have to have with myself regularly though, like where you get frustrated with the outside world or what's going on, and but you can also use it as fuel for that impact you want to have instead of letting it drain you, using it as motivation to be like, but this is why I do what I do. And this is why I, focus on having grassroots change, focusing on community or like focusing on people with their own spiritual healing like you do. And really realizing that we outsource so much of our energy to things we can't control. And if there is, crazy people controlling the world, that would be exactly what they would want, right? Is to siphon the life from us and prevent us from having the impact we actually can have. So
Right.
it's
And
it's
this
a
is also a really good application for people in boundaries.
yeah.
So, there's an analogy that I learned from one of my spiritual teachers, Sovereign Sistemus Dave Lanyon, about boundaries that he really put it in a way that I really love. So, your boundary is your kingdom or queendom, and meaning that what's within your boundary is things that you can manage, you can have full responsibility for, right? Things that are outside your boundary are things that you can't be accountable for, that you can't take responsibility for, right? So if you think about what's in your kingdom or queendom, right, as far as your self-care, your personal responsibilities, your job, your relationships, your family, right? Who are you immediately accountable for? And if you are not showing up to the best of your ability within that boundary of your king or queendom, you have no business expanding your kingdom.
Yeah. I've heard a lot of people talking about that too. Like we get so consumed with what's happening externally, and that is exactly what she said in the last episode too. We're concerned about how people are responding to this, that, or the other thing, or not enough, or this or that. And meanwhile, like we have all of these issues within our own families that aren't being tended to, or people are so concerned about the Epstein files, they're not paying attention to their own kids and their kids on an iPad all day and stuff like that. And so, really being like, well, how is this helping me have the impact in my immediate reality that I actually want to have? And
And that's
so,
going back to how I defined world peace earlier.
yeah,
World peace is not a bunch of people going out in the streets every day and flying signs and waving fingers and telling other people what they're doing wrong. World peace is individuals
Self
who are in
mastery.
full self-mastery of their emotions, of their minds, of their lives, right? Who are able to
Yeah.
wake up every day and manage their king or queendom to as perfect as possible, right? Knowing that perfect will never be attained, but I tell people that perfection is the process of being perfected. As long as you are striving for perfection, it is perfect, right? Perfection
Yeah.
is not stagnant. It's always moving, right? There's always something that could be better, right? So as
Yeah.
long as you're looking around and saying, this is good, could be better.
Yeah.
I'm gonna make it better, right? You're looking at your garden, you're like, okay, I have good plans. This is good. Okay. I'm gonna build a trellis because that would be even better. I'm gonna put in an irrigation system because this is good, but I could make it better, right?
Yeah.
So as long as you're constantly looking for self-improvement and the ways to improve to be able to show up to serve others, because there will innately come anybody who's in any sort of self-improvement, and I'm sure you've experienced this, there will come a point where you have to serve others. You
Yeah.
have to serve others. You have to be in
Yeah.
others.
Hmm.
And that's why and how world peace becomes
Like
exponential.
infectious.
It becomes exponential because you serve yourself to a point that now you have to serve others, right? And you
Right.
give yourself to others, and then they get to a point where they can give, two people tell two people tell two people tell two
Yeah,
people.
yeah, exactly. The
Um,
web continues.
yeah, and it's
So,
just yeah, like Pink Floyd said, don't be another brick in the wall.
yeah, I love that. Oh, so good. And so, okay, last I wanted to end on this conversation because it's such a good one about what Jesus means to you in relation to your own spirituality, your kind of definition of the integration of, religion. But I think, I love how I've seen a lot that Jesus never talked about religion, and I think that's kind of significant when you think of a relationship with him and stuff like that. So, anyways, I want to hear your perspective and how you define your own belief systems.
Yeah, yeah. So I guess I'll start with my own experience. Coming from being atheist, going to Catholic school, really not liking the whole religious thing, getting into a lot of fights in my theology classes.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and even in the first couple of years of my spiritual journey, I had a really hard time with the God, the word God, the G word, and Jesus and all of that. And it took years of enough breaking down to finally have or finally receive um, my own like face-to-face meeting with Jesus, and really have that um, come to Jesus moment, as Brene Brown says, to have my own personal experience with the energy of Christ and Christ consciousness, and to realize that it has always been there. He has always been there and will always be there. And the only reason that I thought he wasn't showing up is because I had built a wall. I
Mm-hmm.
had built a wall between myself and Jesus, myself and God and spirit. And though that wall was built of the bricks of I'm not worthy, I'm bad, I'm not welcome, something's wrong with me, I don't belong here, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? From that entire lifetime of social programming. So through the process of healing, of removing those bricks, is where I was able to have my own personal experience with Jesus. And when you have your own, the only way to eradicate doubt is to know. Until you know, there'll always be doubt, right? So until I knew Jesus and I knew that energy and I knew that feeling is when I could have no doubt that Jesus was here for me and is here for everyone. So I would encourage people to, if they have a desire to feel that energy of agape love, of total acceptance, of total forgiveness, of total belief, believing in yourself, having
Mm-hmm.
confidence in yourself. Jesus came to teach us that. He came in the physical, in physical incarnation. Basically, what Jesus said is that there's no difference between me and you. You can do what I do, 100%, right? So he came here to be the example of full embodiment of our God selves or our higher selves in the physical. So if you want to know how to do that or how to be that, look no further than Jesus because he did it. He came here to show this is how it can be done, and I will do
Mm-hmm.
it. And this is how you can do it.
Yeah.
And um, religion, to break down religion, I see. So if you look at a spiritual practice, for
Mm-hmm.
example, or a spirituality, right? A spiritual system. Um, a spiritual system will have two, I kind of see it as three interwoven paths. You have one side, which is religion, which is basically a system of how to practice,
Right.
right? These are the days, these are the rituals, these are the words that we say that you kneel at this part, stand at this part, pray this many beads, savasana this many times, right? It's the formula or the structure by
Mm-hmm.
which we worship. And then you have philosophy, which is why we worship, the contemplation of the self, the contemplation of the universe, the contemplation of God, right? And you kind of need both, right? And in between that would be the practice of itself, or what I would call a shamanic path, which would be bringing the two together, the why and the how, into the practical application
Mm-hmm.
of actually doing it in full embodiment
Yeah.
of of the energy of it, right? So if you boil down to, okay, a religion is just a system. It's a mode with which to do things, right? And there's different ways that you can do things, right? And the way that you do it is going to be governed by your own direct experience. I was actually having, because I got married a couple months ago, and I was talking to this woman who was getting married, and she was going through those like pre-marriage classes that they do. And she was having like a complete crisis because she found the priest told her that taking birth control is a mortal sin.
Yeah.
And she's like, I've been mortal sinning since I was like 18. I had no idea. Like, does Jesus hate me?
Oh my God.
And I was like,
Yeah.
no, 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 baby. No. Jesus doesn't hate you because he took birth control. Um, and I think that's where a lot of people get tripped up is that they think that God and Jesus being the Son of God, sort of like on the, little lower to the right, is some big bearded white man in the sky who's passing out judgment.
Mm-hmm.
And that is not the case. The way that I would describe God is that, they say that we are made in the image of God or we are children of God, right? Um, so God is a role model for how to live a life of love, mercy, forgiveness, beauty, also justice when needed, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think some religions can lean a little bit, a little Old
Too
Testament
heavy
Jesus,
on the justice.
a little too heavy on the Old Testament, a little heavy
Or
on the
on the
Old.
justice. Yeah.
But that is there, it's an aspect of it. We can't ignore it. But there's also mercy, there's also forgiveness, there's also love and beauty and all of these things. But children grow up, you know? So we're meant to grow up into the image of God. We're meant to grow into, actually, can I read you something really quick?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
let me find the book.
And while you're looking, can you still hear me?
Yes.
So then for you, your relationship with Jesus and it exists outside of religion, basically. Like it's a relationship you form outside of religion. Um, and oh, there's a second part to that. Oh, I'll ask after you read.
Okay. I really developed that relationship through the process of Kabbalah,
Mm,
universal Kabbalah.
mhm.
Outside of, so Kabbalah being this.
Yeah.
see it, the tree of life. Yeah.
Hmm.
So the process of ascending into the higher self through the process of Kabbalah. So it's through the process of ascending the tree of life in Kabbalah that I was
And
able.
Kabbalah is the mystic branch of Judaism, is that right?
Uh, no.
Wait,
Um,
why did I think that? What
a
is
lot
it?
of people think so. Okay, so this glyph is
Wait,
its own.
sorry, go ahead.
It's okay. A lot of people do associate Kabbalah with Judaism, and that is totally valid because mystical Judaism like went really hard with Kabbalah, like
Okay.
really, really went into it, really like it made it their thing, right?
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
really a heavy, heavy, heavy part of Jewish mysticism.
Mm-hmm.
But the Kabbalistic tree of life as its own um geometric shape, right, is its own entity to itself, right?
Okay.
Like, we've seen many symbols throughout the ages, the cross, the pentagram, the swastika, which is not, was kind of taken by who,
Yeah.
we have all of these, the Nazis don't own the swastika, okay? And neither do Indians, the Hinduism. It's its own entity that is studied and contemplated by different religious or cultural sects around
Hmm.
around the world, right?
Okay, got
So,
it.
so you can, you don't have to be Jewish to study the Kabbalah.
Right.
All you
I
have to,
was reading something, what was I reading? And it was talking about how each major religion has its own branch of mysticism. And I remembered it having reference like Kabbalah and reference to Judaism, but that was probably what it was, is that it just like
yeah,
leaned
so
heavily into it. I thought it was like, oh, Kabbalah is the Hebrew, sort of. So that makes sense
yeah,
now.
they
Okay.
just did, and it's real. I've read a lot of Jewish Kabbalistic texts, and it's really good. It's you learn a lot. It's like really on point. They did a lot, so you can learn a lot from Kabbalah, from Jewish mysticism. But yes, there is Catholic Kabbalah. There is different African religions of Kabbalah. There's Eastern Kabbalah, like
Ooh,
a
I
lot.
want to look into this. Do you have any books
Yeah.
you recommend on Kabbalah as like its own entity?
So I would recommend a really good starting book would be Simplified Kabbalah by Ted Andrews.
Mm-hmm.
That's a really good book. It's a pretty short read. Um, Another one that I would recommend is Kabbalistic Symbolism by Gareth Knight is
Okay.
another really big one. It's a very thick book, but it's actually fairly digestible.
Okay.
Um, so don't be scared because it's like this big. But if you take it in chunks, it's okay.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Ooh, I'm excited.
We could probably do a whole other podcast on Kabbalah because I'm not a Kabbalah teacher. Let me preface that by saying I have taken Kabbalah many, many times. And I'm very passionate about Kabbalah and I love it a lot.
Ooh, that would be fun to do a pod. We'll do another one on that. So.
Okay, cool. Okay, but let me read. So this is from one of my teachers. This is his book, You Are Not Perfect the Way You Are. 11 Keys to Mastering Your Life. Some people don't like that title, and I get it, but just roll with me here. Um, and he talks about basically um, growing into being your own God, like
Mhm.
coming into being the God of your life. And okay, so let me start here. Um, One of the things I would say if you were in front of me talking about God and asking, why doesn't God do this? Why doesn't God do that? Would be an answer rooted in hermetics. Why aren't you doing it? You are God. So God will only behave in accordance with you, again, because you are God. Is God not answering the prayers? Well, how many prayers are you answering for others? Is God not helping you? How many people are you helping? Are you helping yourself? Why is God allowing so many people to go homeless? I don't know. What are you doing about the homeless situation? God is not an abdication of responsibility by assigning work through prayer and requests to a separate being, but it is in fact embracing that responsibility as something to personally act on if one wants to approve it. I don't want to take up too much time reading the whole thing, but it's basically saying God is that role model, right? God will be however you are.
Yeah.
You
It
want
makes
God to
you
be, yeah, kind and merciful. You need to be kind and merciful.
It also makes me just think about that energy of like the divine feminine and the divine masculine of taking aligned action and surrendering in the aligned action and as a mechanism of like co creating with God and being like, you have to kind of meet God halfway. And then it kind of, he, she, God, source, whatever, that energy magnifies and exponentially supports you on your path when you're taking action in alignment with the person you say you want to be. It's that sort of that co-creation and that element of flow that we can find with life. That's so beautiful, and you really start to feel it when you're walking in alignment with your integrity, which is kind of what that text was saying. Well, are you being the person you want others to be? Are you showing up for the thing? Are you like working actively towards the things you say you want? um, and I think when we are doing that, we enlist the support of God and the universe to act on our behalf, and it makes life just unfold in such magical ways. And sobriety is a perfect example of like taking one of those steps. It's like we want our life to be different, yet then we drink every day, and and so it's just all of these actions we're taking and direct misalignment to the person we want to be. And when we're not doing that, it's like, wow, you realize like, hey, being a good person, doing what I think I should be doing pays off.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And there's so much work that we can do right here within ourselves, you know,
Yeah.
and that's the main place that we have power. It's also often the main, not often it is, the main point of resistance.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Resist ourselves, we
It's
resist our
hard.
so much. Yeah, and I always wonder why.
I think that's like the human experience is like, and also, a lot of our programming goes directly against it because it makes us easier to kind of oppress and control when we don't understand the true power of our inherent nature. But I also think it's part of the human condition because it gives us something to force to work against and to like overcome. It's like the duality and, making that like inherent resistance is there. So we have to like, we're forced to like believe in our worth. We're forced to believe in our capacity and potential and our power. And it's so cool though, because once you do begin to harness that, not that I'm like perfect at it by any means, but you start to feel that connection to life and that connection to flow. It's just so like infectious, and it speaks to that what you were saying. You do want to share it, you do want to help other people because you really understand like, wow, this is something we all have access to, and like, why didn't they tell us? No one told us this.
Yeah,
I have to
yeah,
tell everyone.
yeah,
So,
absolutely, absolutely.
yeah.
I think another reason that it can be so difficult too, I think everything that you say is like absolutely on point. And I
Yeah.
think another thing, and it is beautiful and it is like better than anything that anyone could imagine, when you
Mm-hmm.
allow yourself to receive yourself, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And at the same time, can be totally terrifying
Yeah.
because when you step into that power and authority, the buck stops with you.
Mm-hmm.
You become the deliverer of your own salvation.
Yeah. The other thing I think is terrifying too, and I don't know if you've experienced this at times, is like really stepping into your power and taking ownership of your potential is like can be really triggering for people. And sometimes as I haven't fully felt comfortable embracing my power, it's made me really scared. Like, people aren't gonna like me. I'm too visible and I'm like too confident, or like trying, working up to that. And you can feel the resistance it brings up in other people about their own lacking connection to their ownership. And that's like when you're kind of first stepping into that, it's really scary. You're like, oh my God, I don't want people not to like me, that kind of thing. And so I've definitely experienced like that along my path too, where I'm like, I don't want to trigger people, but also want to be my full self.
Yeah,
So,
we're not afraid of failure. We're afraid of success.
mm-hmm,
We don't not do things because we're afraid we're gonna be good at it.
mm-hmm.
Or because we're afraid we're gonna fail. We do it because we're afraid we're gonna come into that power.
Yeah. Yes. Oh, what a good podcast. Good thing we started early. We went on for a long
Yeah.
time. This is gonna be a long
Oh,
one. So, yes. Okay, this really is the last question before I
okay.
ask people where they can find you, or ask
Oh,
you
yeah.
where people can find you and all that stuff. So, when you said you had, starting to directly experience the energy of Jesus, would you explain that as something that you had a one like holy moly moment, or was it more like a progression of access to this kind of energy you could feel more and more intensely? Like, what would you describe it as?
It was a little bit of both. So it was during the process of a Kabbalah Ascension program,
Right.
um, where we are doing a lot of work of deprogramming subconscious
Mm-hmm.
stuff. We spend like a whole year deprogramming subconscious programming by asking questions and opening portals for higher dimensional energy to flow in and all of that. And there's a final retreat weekend in that. And there's a few exercises that you do to help you come to that point. And I had actually already done the Kabbalah Ascension program one time before, but I was very much still in skepticism. I was very much like showing up just for the sake of showing up,
Yeah.
basically.
Checking it. Yeah.
Yeah, I was not very present with the whole thing. And it wasn't until I was in my, because when I first came to the mystery school and I did like that whole year of a Kabbalah ascension and everything, I still was not sold that any of this was working. You know, I had to go off and do some other stuff, right? Do some other like shamanic journeying, get Reiki certified, and work with some other practitioners, and then eventually come back to the mystery school and be like, okay, all right, this is really something here that I can't
Yeah.
that I
It's
can't
great.
ignore.
Yeah.
And then doing the next Kabbalah ascension journey, um, there was a moment where I would say if someone on their own were really looking to have this connection, a big key is sacrifice. Is you really have to sacrifice what is separating you, and sobriety is a huge sacrifice, right? You're sacrificing something. It kind of can seem like an easy sacrifice,
Mm.
right? Well, maybe like theoretically an easier sacrifice because you're like, well, obviously this is, separating me from myself. But when you get really down to the nitty-gritty, it is a sacrificing part of your identity or part of who you think you are, right? You think you're someone who does this thing or someone who needs this thing, right? And you have to sacrifice that. And some people don't like that word, sacrifice, they get triggered by it. So I like to offer a reframe. A way that you can think of sacrifice is to make something holy. When you sacrifice it, you make it holy. You also always sacrifice it for something greater, sacrifice it for something else that could be.
Mhm.
So a lot of what I was sacrificing in order to have this journey was all the abuse and everything that I had, physical abuse, sexual abuse that I had experienced growing up was I had to an extent forgiven my abusers, but I had to forgive myself
Mhm.
for holding on to it, for allowing myself to believe that what happened is what, made me dirty or made me unworthy or made me unclean and, separate from God and right, all those things. As
Yeah.
I chose to take those belief systems on and run with them, which is a normal thing that someone would
Yeah.
do
Yeah.
after those instances. Like, of course, yes. But, right, but healing is coming into your own agency and coming into your own power and being able to tell yourself the truth, which is the things that happen to me don't define me, right? Just because I ate waffles today instead of pancakes for breakfast this morning doesn't mean that I'm a different person,
Mhm.
right? Or because, it was raining today and not sunny, which is something I can't control, but I am forced to,
Yeah.
subject myself to. It doesn't mean that I'm any less sovereign.
Mhm.
Those are very simplistic, watered down examples, but true nonetheless. Things that happen to you do not define who you are. And when you choose to take them on as identities and hold them and cling to them and then allow it to create this whole personality around you of I'm an angry fu Nazi feminist whatever because this thing happened to me and I've chosen to make this whole identity, puts me in this shell of separation from love and power and acceptance and everything that Jesus is offering in regards to healing. So I had to sacrifice that identity, which felt like who I was. It was a huge coping mechanism, but I had to sacrifice that. And in the sacrifice of that, I started pulling down that wall that separated me from the unconditional love that was always, always there, always present. Had to take that down, and
Yeah.
sacrifice that in order to receive that love. So if you're wanting that, it's not that it's not there. It's just maybe that you're holding on to something that allows you to believe that you're separate from it.
Mm-hmm.
If you can sacrifice that, you can at least get a couple steps closer to receiving it.
I love that. Thank you for sharing your experience. This is such a lovely episode. I was sharing with Madison before that I was like, ugh, I've been feeling the collective lately. And I mean, I don't hide it when I feel that way. So I'm sure anyone listening that knows me will know. But it's just like such a beautiful reminder speaking to people like you, just like aspirational about the way that I also hope to like move through the world and alchemize the darkness and focus on the areas we can control and really understanding the benefit of that spiritual relationship and energy woven through our lives is just such a good episode all the way around. I loved it. And so to end, can you share where people can find you in your work, please?
Yeah, absolutely. So I have my little healing studio, which is where we're at right now. It's where I teach my classes and do my sessions. So this is the Light Center at Woburn, 42 Pleasant Street. You can find me online at thelightcenterboston.com. You can book a free consultation. You can come down to a meditation class. I host lots of events where you can come and experience the energy. And you can also find me on Instagram, the_light center, and on Facebook.com/the light center Boston.
Amazing. Thank you so much for being here, and thank you everyone for tuning in. I hope that I know this will be an impactful episode, so I just love it. Thank you so much, and don't forget to like, share, subscribe if this episode resonates with you. And until next time, bye everyone.
Thank you so much. Bye.